Hi, I'm actually not sure if this is working now. I'm really hoping that it does. Oh my God, it seems to be working. Yay! Finally, I'm so sorry, lovelies. Thank you so much for waiting. Our streaming software that we're using wouldn't for the life of me connect to YouTube. So I had to basically reset everything and set everything back up. And then on top of that, we're supposed to be two, so not just me, Hannah Lisa, but also Claire. But we had a little time zone mix up, which sometimes happens if you're working remotely, as we both are. So you'll just have to do with me, but I'm super excited that you're all here and that you stuck around and waited for me. Thank you so much for your patience. So today I'm here to talk about our call for submissions for our upcoming issue 7 and share a little bit more about the theme that we picked for that issue. But most importantly, I'm here to answer any and all of your questions, because I know that depending on how often you might have submitted to a magazine, how experienced you are as a knitwear designer, there are a lot of questions around submitting and working with a magazine. So please don't be shy. There are no bad questions or anything. You can ask me anything that you'd like to know. The way to do that is to simply type in something into the chat. I'll be able to see that here, and then I will tackle the questions either as they come in, or if I'm in the middle of sharing something right now, then I will take it out and answer them a little later. So issue 7, our call for submissions, has been out for a good week now. And we both love the theme that we're going to create this issue with. It's called Joy, and it came from a lot of different suggestions that our wonderful flock of knitters and designers sent us. We do this every time that we open a call for submissions. We ask our customers, our audience, everyone who is connected with our community, what they would like to see. And this topic of joy came up quite often, and it was one that really resonated with both in our selection process. By the time that issue 7 will hit shop shelves, which will be in spring next year, so a little over a year from now, we're hoping that we're looking forward to a really beautiful, bright spring and summer season in the Northern Hemisphere, and that we're able to look back on a winter that will hopefully have been a little easier and more cheerful than the last one, that we've all learned to live with the pandemic, and that hopefully vaccinations will help reduce case rates, that our lives will be maybe a little easier, if I'm allowed to say that, than they are right now. And the really beautiful thing about this theme of joy is one thing that I think you as designers will like, because we're giving you complete free reign on whatever you want to design. We just want you to do something that you really enjoy, that you find joyful, that brings joy to your life. And that can be sharing a favorite technique in your design, using a favorite shape, doing a favorite type of garment or accessory, using a favorite stitch pattern. It's essentially a love letter to whatever you really like about knitting and knitwear design. That's really the only brief that there is. As always, we do have a mood board, and I'm going to try and share this with you. I'm hoping that this will work. All right, so you should be able to see the mood board now. So this is the mood board for our issue 7, Joy. As always, we're not sharing knitwear on the mood board, because I think it's just it leads too much. Like, we don't have a particular vision about any shape or way that that you're going to be designing looks like. The mood board for us is there to convey the mood, and the mood for us is going to be joyful and cheerful, and we just want people to look at this issue and genuinely feel happy. In terms of colors, with pops of very vibrant pinks and yellows and blues. This is exactly what you'll see on the mood board. And every designer is different, so you can take whatever you like from this mood board and leave the rest behind. You can choose to work with a specific picture. You can choose to just work from, the overall impression that you get from this. But we've had really good feedback ever since we started doing actually issue-specific mood boards. So we really hope that you like this one as well. Okay. So I'm just going to pop back on the screen here. Ooh. Okay, you can't see the mood board. Oh no, that's not great. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, then we'll just have to do without the mood board, or do let me know if it kind of appeared after I had said it would appear. I'm just going to describe it to you just in case that, it doesn't, it still hasn't appeared. So the mood board is filled with a lot of, mostly geometric, abstract photos. No, it's not abstract photos, but it's photos that show architecture. Some of them show fruit, like bananas and stuff. What's most important is the vibe of the mood board, which is uplifting, it's happy, it's joyful. Ooh, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. So Mary posted the link to the mood board. That's actually a really good idea. I'm going to do the same so that you can just pop it up. There we go. So that's the mood board. As I said, in terms of colors, it's neutrals with pops of pinks, vibrant yellows, vibrant blues. All of those colors are colors that we would love to see in your submissions, in your swatches, but that's not necessarily a must. So if you don't have any color like that at hand, or if you're envisioning something else for your design, you're absolutely free to swatch and send a submission in other colors, of course, as well. Again, as I said, feel free to hit me with your questions at any point in time. I'm just going to keep talking about sort of the call for submissions and how this works until I get more questions. In terms of how the call for submissions itself works, I'm also going to post the link to our call for submissions here. So that was the other thing that I was going to share. But obviously the screen sharing for some reason doesn't really work. So I'm going to walk you through it. And if you want to, you can, of course, open the website. So the deadline for this call for submissions is on March 8th. We're always having a sort of hard cut at 11:59 p.m. Berlin time, which is GMT +1. And by that time and date, your submission as a PDF should have landed in my inbox. You'll find the email address for me in the call for submissions as well. It's just hannalisa@making-stories.com. What is important for or what might be interesting, not important, but what might be interesting for you to know is which kind of things we're looking for to include in the collection. So as you know, if you're familiar with our magazine, we're usually including between 10 to 12 patterns in each magazine. And for issue 7, we're looking to include 2 to 3 pairs of socks, 2 to 3 neck accessories. So that means shawls, also beautiful scarves or cowls, 1 to 2 hats, 3 to 4 sweaters. That can be pullovers, cardigans, but also t-shirts because it's a spring issue. We're also open to patterns for home accessories. So that's nothing that we've ever done before. But if you have a particularly, if you have an idea that speaks to you for, I don't know, a pillow, a blanket, something else, something that I might not even have thought of before, send it our way. In terms of pattern complexity, we're looking for patterns in the full range from beginner to super advanced knitter. We're not putting labels onto our patterns, and that's intentional because we believe that everyone can basically knit everything, with YouTube being a super readily available source right now, and with hopefully our patterns, being written in a way that most knitters will be able to figure out their way through them, even if they're not super, super knowledgeable. That being said, if you're like, okay, I really like writing something for beginners, absolutely, we're super open to that. Most of the designs will, as always, be paired with one of our yarn partners. But if you have an idea for a stash busting project, feel free to send that to us as well. It's not something that we've done before, but it's something that both Claire and I feel, especially with us finding our heart and focus again with sustainability, is really something that we want to explore more. How can we work from stash? How can we possibly combine different yarns that we might have? So if you have an idea around that, feel free to send that to us as well. Hi, Penny. In terms of the timeline, as I already said, the submission deadline is March 8th. The next day, we're going to make our decision, and then everyone receives feedback. So I know that some publishing companies won't send out rejection emails to designers whose designs haven't been picked. We do that. So you're going to get an email from us on March 9th, whether your pattern has been accepted or not in your inbox. If you haven't received one, please do follow up with us. Sometimes it has happened. I try to make sure that, my spam folder is all clear, but sometimes it has happened that things land in spam folders. So just know that this is a thing that we do. Then if we choose to work with your design, you'll have until mid-June to write up your pattern, and you'll have until mid-August to knit up your sample, both of which can happen at the same time. So if you've been following us for a little while, you'll know that we used to do it so that you had to write the pattern first and then you would knit the sample. We've changed that for the last couple of issues. And we think this is now actually a much better approach. So it's entirely up to you, the designer, whether you first want to write the pattern and then knit the sample, or maybe first knit the sample and then write up the pattern, or maybe do both at the same time. The only thing that's important to us is that there are 2 deadlines, one for your written pattern and one for your sample. And then we're going to do all our magic with tech editing and with test knitting and with layouting. And then in March next year, issue 7 is going to hit the shop shelves. I've included the timelines for tech editing and test knitting in the call for submissions as well. It's important for us that you're available during that time because there will be questions coming from us, from our tech editors, channeled through us from our test knitters as well. So we need you to be there and help us get your pattern, into super top amazing shape. I'm just going to quickly check if there are any questions. Oh, thank you so much, Vanessa and Heather. I love the pink bath as well. Before I jump into sort of the next portion around compensation and rights, any questions so far on what I talked about? Just feel free to, post about that. Send me any questions in the chat. With regards to compensation and rights, I want to talk a little bit about sort of what we're doing here at Making Stories and what you as the designer will be doing. So we here at Making Stories will take care of yarn support for your design. So that means we're going to pair you up with a yarn partner, and we're going to organize everything that you need to swatch and knit up your sample. We're always happy to learn about new yarn partners. So if you have a specific one, a particular one that you would love to work with, please do mention that in your submission. We'll also take care of tech editing with our two wonderful tech editors, Marina and Jess. Test knitting, so you don't have to do anything for testing. That's a question that I already had a few emails about. So we're doing everything from reaching out to our pool of test knitters, to selecting them, to organizing the entire admin stuff behind it, to answering any questions. The only thing that might happen during the test knitting phase where we loop you in is if we have specific things that we don't really know how to deal with in the pattern. So say there's an instruction that's maybe a little bit unclear, and then we'll reach out to you to clarify what exactly you would like to put in that pattern there. We'll also take care of photography with our amazing photographer, Melinda, the layout with our wonderful graphic designer, Camille, and anything that has to do really with getting everything into the magazine shape and then layout it. We're also going to be doing errata updates for you after the pattern has been published in the magazines. What does that mean exactly? It means that sometimes mistakes happen and we don't catch them. It's normal. And then, once something like that reaches us, be it through a customer email or an Instagram message, or maybe directly from you, the designer, we'll of course put that on the website, and we'll also put that on a Ravelry page for that particular pattern. What are you responsible for? So you're responsible for writing up the pattern within our style guide. So we do provide a pattern template and a style guide for you to work with, and you're responsible for knitting up the sample and getting it to us by the deadline. You can, of course, if you prefer that, outsource the sample knitting also to a sample knitter. That's entirely up to you if that is something that you'd like to do. But essentially, how you get the sample knit up, that is for you to decide. Quickly check if there are any questions. Okay. So I'm going to save those questions. I'm just going to finish up sort of the entire compensation and rights thing, and then I'm going to get to your questions. Keep them coming, please. Yeah. So compensation for your patterns is based on complexity, how complex it is, how many sizes. For example, that also factors into complexity. So, socks have less sizes than sweaters, for example, and we're paying between 100 euros to 550 euros, depending on what it is and how complex it is. In terms of sample shipping costs, we're reimbursing the cost from wherever you're based to us here in Berlin for up to 10 euros for domestic shipping and 35 for international shipping. In terms of the rights, so for 4 months after the publication, we here at Making Stories will hold the exclusive rights for your patterns. That means that they cannot be published anywhere else during that time. After that, you get the rights back and you can do whatever you like with them. So you can self-publish them, you can put them into a collection with other patterns that you've published, anything basically that you like. The rights that we still have are to sell your pattern in the magazine format. So in the print magazine and in the digital version of the magazine, because usually, we don't sell out within 4 months after the publication. So we wouldn't want to scrap all of those magazines, right? So, yeah, but that is really, we won't sell your patterns individually, say on Ravelry or something. We might be offering sort of individual patterns for designers who would like to offer them through us, working on a program for that. But that's way in the future. So for right now, that's the right situation that we're working with. As I said, after 4 months, the pattern rights revert back to you. We do offer a couple of additional services that sort of factor into compensation, broadly speaking. They're not directly monetary, but I've learned that I think depending on where you are in your design journey and what you prefer with regards to your branding, they're super valuable to some designers. So I thought I would mention them. So one is you get a completely layouted pattern for you to use after those 4 months. So you get a PDF in our Making Stories layout, and you can just put that in your Ravelry store or Lovecraft store and sell it and call it a day. You can also get access to the InDesign version of your pattern. So if you prefer to have it layouted or to lay out it yourself or work with a graphic designer to put it into your branding, that's of course also doable. Now, we are purchasing the rights for the pattern photos for you as well. So even if you're using your own layout, you can choose up to 5 photos to go in the layout. You don't have to reshoot any of the designs. So that's also something that I hope will help make those patterns individually available. If you want to read our full designer contract, there's a link in the call for submissions page. And if you have any questions on any of this, I know it sounds pretty technical, but it's, I hope it's not too complicated. You can always ask anything there. All right. Now let me tackle your questions. Okay. So, Sarah ask designer submit my design. Absolutely. Like you can submit as many designs as you want to. The only thing that I'll ask, we'll get to how exactly your submission should look like in a second. The only thing that I ask is please do send us 1 PDF per submission because that makes our life a little easier. Stephanie asks about how many submissions do you get? So we do get quite a few. It's gone up for the past 2 issues. So since issue 5, we're at around 350 to 400 submissions, I'd say. But that's still like, I don't really know. I don't want to say it's still less than other publications because I wouldn't really exactly know how much they would get. But I do think that some of them do get significantly more. Yeah, just as a thought. So that's sort of how many we've gotten. Yeah. I hope that answers the questions, Stephanie. Vanessa, are you open to working with first-time designers? Absolutely. And please know that this comes with an understanding from us that there might be more questions coming from you, like when you're a first-time designer, no matter whether that's with regards to the process or maybe even the designing, the grading itself. We're going to do whatever we can to help you with this. As I said, we have awesome tech editors. Claire is a wonderful designer. I know a little bit about designing. And I think amongst all of us, we can help you make your pattern sort of exactly how you want it to be. I will recommend, if you're a first-time designer, submit something that you're confident you can design. From personal experience, I started designing socks. That was the first thing that I designed. I kind of thought I had this down by now. I just found an error in my latest sock pattern. So yeah, there is that. So maybe like start with something that doesn't require a ton of grading if you're a first-time designer. So maybe with a hat or a sock, or a triangular shawl. Those are always super popular. Maybe not a sweater that requires grading for 10 different sizes if you're working with us. Yeah, that would be my recommendation. That being said, we've definitely also worked with first-time designers who've done their first sweater design with us, and some of them have been really awesome. So yay. Nitarista asked, do you work with hand yarn dyers too? Absolutely. We love dyers. We're not just working with big companies. I have a really soft spot in my heart for small yarn companies, and we do the best that we can to accommodate their needs. So some of them, will be like, okay, like we can only take on a certain number of testers because otherwise we'll run out of capacity to dye yarns. So, if you have a favorite hand dyer that you would love to work with, please do mention them. I will say, we're only working with non-superwash yarns. I mean, if you're watching this, you are probably familiar with what we're all about, but we're about sustainability and knitting. So only non-superwash yarns. We prefer working with yarns that are traceable, so where we know where they're processed and where they come from, and with companies who then do. So we wouldn't want to work with someone who dyes exclusively on superwash basis, for example. Teresa asks, when we get the sample, it's up to us what size we knit. I mean, I knit the size to fit me, so I can wear it, of course, but I guess there will be some model and it should fit her or him. Yes, we will specify which sample size you knit, because exactly that reason. There's going to be, the model's going to have certain body measurements, and we need the designs to be the size that people can see how they're different. We have a sweater design with negative ease alongside a sweater design with super positive ease in the magazine. We want this to look exactly the way that it's intended by the designers in the photos. So, if one of them knits a size 2 and the other one knits a size 4, and then we have a model with a size 3 bust circumference, that's not going to end up looking the way that the designer envisions. So we will specify that, and we also take the sample size into account when we determine your compensation, because knitting a larger sample requires more time. So that's also something that we do. Mary Beth asks, do you prefer top-down sweaters? I love seams, but I know many do not. It's an interesting question. We've done a customer survey a couple of years back where we asked our audience and our customers which type of sweater construction and also other types of construction they prefer. And by far, top-down sweater construction is the most. I think it won with like 78% or something. That was a super, super high percentage of people. I think part of that is because it's a lot easier to modify a sweater if you knit it top down than if you knit it bottom up or in pieces, because you can't try it on as well. So if your design is modifiable, actually have it worked up from the top, then we would prefer that, yes. Teresa asked again, do we get the sample back or it stays with you? You get the sample back. So we keep the sample for the 4 months that the rights to the publication lie with us. And then we send it back to you, and that shipping cost is completely on us. So, you don't, I don't know who would do that, but you don't have to pay to get your sample back. It's yours. Like, you've put in the work, and then you're free to do whatever you want with it. Like, if you want to wear it, if you want to gift it, if you want to donate it, if you want to auction it off for charity, it's yours. what was I going to say? Oh, the reason why we keep the sample for those 4 months is because we're going to do quite a lot of promotion around the launch date. And some of that is going to involve showing off the samples. So like YouTube Lives, and sometimes we also take them to selected stockists for trunk shows. So, rest assured, we're taking super good care of them. They're all stored away super safely. But that's the reason we're doing them. Penny, do you have standard size range for sweaters? Yes, excellent question, Penny. And a wonderful segue into the sort of last question about the submission. So we do have a standard size range that we're starting at the I might have forgotten to include that. Oh no. Okay. So if you scroll down on the call for submissions page, there's a portion that says useful references. There's a link to a blog post. What are we looking for in a submission? But there's also a longer section on sizing. So we do have a standard sizing sheet that we asked you to work with that includes the nude body measurements for different body parts. So it will include nude body measurements, for example, for chest circumference, wrist circumference, certain, for head circumferences, and we would ask you to work with that size range. The reason why we do this is because we want our sizes to be consistent, within the collection, but also across the collections, so that, someone who knits a size 4 from one pattern can be reasonably confident that a size 4 from a different pattern would also work for them, because it's being worked off the same nude bust circumference. So yeah, we also hope that makes it a little easier, because I actually find we've put in quite a bit of effort into developing that sizing sheet, and that work taught me that it's actually not super easy to come up with sizing for those things. So yeah. Okay. So while I'm waiting for more questions to come in, I'm just going to go through the rest of the sort of call for submissions. The last thing that I wanted to share with the submissions is what should you actually put in your submission. So your submission should be a PDF, ideally 1 page or maybe 2 pages per design. It should include a short description of the design and its construction. So do let us know what it is, how it's being worked up. A note on how your design relates to the topic of issue 7. How does it bring you joy? A photo of your swatch. Please, please, please make it a well-lit swatch that's been blocked. Natalia Sinelchikova, a designer who we've worked with in the past, has some great tips on swatching to show key features of your design. There are amazing ways that you can show how your design is going to look like, and not just what the stitch pattern is. So if you're designing a shawl, think about making us a mini version of the shawl that shows the shape and the stitch pattern at the same time. You can also, if you're designing a sweater, knit up a swatch that shows how, for example, the ribbing goes into the increases, goes into the stitch pattern, so that we know what are the core design elements and things like that. And if you make the swatch and if you photograph it, please make sure that it's well lit, ideally under natural light, because that way, you present your work literally in the best light possible. And we want to understand what your vision is behind the design, and for that, the swatch is absolutely essential. The next thing that we would want to see is a sketch, ideally on the body, that serves to tell us which fit you want to have. So the sweater, for example, that I'm wearing right now is a drop shoulder, pretty boxy kind of sweater. So, something like that we can envision that much more easily if you just send us a sketch of whatever you're designing on a body. Plus, then last but not least, suggested yarn weight and gauge. You want to work this up in fingering weight, DK weight, worsted weight, what's your gauge, anything else particular that we should know about the yarn. So should it be a high twist yarn because stitch definition? Or is there a particular dye that you would love to work with? Do you have particular color suggestions that you think would work both well with the design and with our mood board? All of those are really, really good. And we've gotten to a point where very often we'll follow the designer's yarn recommendations because we recognize that by doing what we used to do before, which was always pairing the designer with a yarn that we definitely wanted to work with, didn't necessarily always show the design in the best light. You're the designer, you know best, you have a vision for the yarn, and we want to respect that. That's our role. So if you have all of that together, put it into a PDF, send it to my email address, and then yay, it will be with us. I will say before I go back and check if there are more questions, if you require any accommodation for a disability, no matter what it may be, you don't need to disclose any details. It would just be super helpful if you let us know. So, we can do whatever we can to accommodate everything, we want you, no matter whether that's, requiring certain longer time stretches for certain things, or, anything that where you might be like, oh, I'm not entirely sure if I can actually submit because XYZ, do let us know and we'll figure something out with you. Now, don't let that deter you. Please, please, please don't. All right, lovelies. Any more questions? Any other questions? While I'm waiting for more questions to come in, I'm going to suggest so there's the portion of the call for submissions website that talks about the patterns, then there's essays and illustrations, and then at the bottom, as I mentioned earlier, there's a section on useful references. So the first portion of this is a bit of more information about what are we looking for in submissions. Claire has written a wonderful blog post about what makes a good submission that if you're a little bit unsure about, I highly recommend you check out. And then we've also linked to a video that we did with Natalia a while ago about her swatching approach. Unfortunately, the audio isn't really great, but you can still switch off the audio if it bothers you. There's quite a bit of an echo. And watch what she shows in terms of the swatches. I think it blew my mind when I saw it the first time. And I think it's a really, really cool way to A, test out whether your design idea works, and B, show whoever you're submitting this to, be us or someone else, how your design should look like. Then the second portion under useful references is what I already talked about, the sizing and some key measurements that we're working with. When you get the notification that you've been accepted, you'll get access to the full sizing sheet, but you'll have key measurements for any type of thing that we think you might require for your submission. An additional reason why we're putting this in is because sometimes you have a design idea with a certain stitch pattern that only works in certain repeats. And sometimes it's really, really, really hard to actually configure that in a way that it works with the sizes that we have. So if you're working with, say, a particularly large scale stitch pattern, then I encourage you to actually try out whether that works with the measurements that we have. And then if it doesn't, maybe rethink it, like maybe think about having that large scale stitch pattern as a panel and then doing the rest in stockinette or reverse stockinette so that the grading gets a little easier, just as a suggestion how you can work with the measurements that we provide. You'll also see how many sizes we design for. So for garments, we have 10 sizes, socks 5 sizes, hats and mittens 3 sizes. Sorry if you hear you hear some kid noise in the background. That's my little one. And then last but not least, you'll find links to 2 places that you can look for yarn partners. If you're kind of curious who we might pair you with, or if you want some inspiration, we have a page on our website where we list all of the yarn partners that we've already worked with or that designs are being worked up in at the moment. And I've also linked to the blog post that we're always updating, ongoing updates on indie dyers who dye on non-superwash basis. So both of these are excellent ways to look for yarn partners. Okay, so there are a couple of more comments / questions. Lauren has an excellent point. Hi, Lauren, by the way. I hope you're well. Because of lockdown, it's so hard to find new yarn because I can't see it in person. Are you able to help guide us if our design is accepted in finding yarn? For example, non-superwash sock yarn. Absolutely. Like you don't need to suggest a specific yarn to us at all. You can tell us which properties you'd be looking for in a yarn. So say for a non-superwash, like if you're designing a sock pattern, you have a pretty complex cable pattern, for example, you would probably want something with good stitch definition that really makes the cables shine. Do let us know about that in the submission, and then we'll go through our yarn partner database and our indie dyer database, and we'll be like, okay, so we think Lauren's design would really work super well with this particular yarn. Heather asks, I would imagine it is preferred that they are only new designs, but have you accepted designs that have been knitted previously but no pattern is available? Yes, like the only requirement is that it hasn't been published anywhere. So it can't have been published either self-published or in a different context, like in a different magazine, for example. I will say if you have something that you've knitted up already, do make sure that it still works within our sizing, because we will require you to rework it in the sizes that we ask for in our standard body sizing spreadsheet. So, if that is something that you would prefer not to do, then I would say maybe think about another suggestion. Lauren, yeah, absolutely, like totally. And I have one of these, these big, gigantic plastic IKEA boxes. I think a lot of people have them for storing yarn. I have 1.5 of them filled with shape cards and another one filled with sample skeins. So this is really important for me to have at least a shape card of a yarn that I'm trying to pair someone with, so that I can see it and see how high is the twist, does it have any halo, anything like that. So yeah. And also, like, it has happened once or twice before that designers have gotten back to us after we've said, hey, we would love to work with you. We would love to have this design that you proposed in our magazine. We would love to pair it with this yarn in this particular colorway. And they were like, okay, actually, I'm not entirely sure if that works, because it looks like it has a halo, and I don't really think that would be a good match for the pattern. And then, usually, like we've done really our best to find a super, super good match. But if you think it's not a great match, then you let us know, and then we'll find a substitute yarn for you. So that's not a problem at all. Okay. So I'm going to keep this open for, let's say, 5 more minutes just to wait if there are more questions. So if you have more questions, please put them in right now while I wrap everything up. If you have any questions after this live video that maybe you didn't think to ask or you weren't entirely sure about, or often, you're like, I'll be in the shower and I'm like, oh, I had this idea. How about this? You just send me an email. You'll find my email address on the Call for Submissions website, or you can just send us an email through the contact form, and that will land with Claire, and then she'll forward it to me. So you can ask us anything and everything with regards to working with us or submitting. And I really know submitting is hard. Like, there's a lot of love and energy and time that goes into putting together a submission. And in previous, I think it was in previous live videos, or maybe I got an email about that. I think sometimes people have been afraid that, we might love design ideas or something like that. Never, ever. Like, there's so much work that goes into this, and every one of you has such a unique design vision. I'm just super appreciative of every single submission that lands in our inbox, because I know how much work goes into them. And then one thing that we started doing, which if you're watching this and you've been one of them, I'm really sorry, but like, I started offering feedback to designs that we have not accepted, because I think it's the least that I can do. You put in so much work into a submission that the least that I can do is actually sit down and give you a couple of thoughts and insights into why it didn't make it in the magazine. Sometimes it will be purely a thing of, okay, like, there was this other design that was just a tiny bit more consistent with the collection. And other times it will be like, I think, these features of the design could be worked on a little bit more. So do know that this is an option. If you want to have feedback on a submission after we've done the selection, I'll never do that before, but after we've done that selection, I'm happy to provide that to you. It might take me a little while. That was why I was laughing a little earlier. It took me a solid 6 months for people to get back to with the issue 6 feedback round, but I'll promise I'll do better this time for issue 7. Long story short, know that this is something that we do and offer after the design selection process is over. We're happy to give feedback on designs. Little cabinets, that sounds all so supportive. Yeah, I hope it does. It's how I feel about designing. I love this work. Like, this is my life's work. This is what I want to do. I don't want to do anything else. And I could never do this without the designers. Like, all of these babies here, like, these things, they wouldn't exist without you, with the designers. My job is to present your work in the best possible light, and it's very much what I enjoy. So I'm really appreciative of all of the creative energy and all of the time that flows into this. So yeah, any other questions? Otherwise, I'm gonna wrap this up with a last note. Well, this is technically focusing, or has been focusing, on the design side of things. We also always look for essays and illustration, any visual or written work that relates to the intersection of sustainability and joy, in this case for issue 7. That, is also something that we accept submissions for, no matter whether it's an essay or a poem, a short story, a collage, a graphic novel, anything like that. And no matter whether you're watching this and you're someone who would like to submit something that is not a design, or you know someone who might want to, I highly encourage that as well. Deadlines are pretty similar, and you'll find all of the details for that on the call for submissions page as well. So yeah, this was super fun. I really hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I had a great time. Thank you so much for asking all of these questions, and also for encouraging me or us, like Vanessa. Thank you so much. And also Penny. You're all, yeah, I so appreciate it that you spent this time with me and that you were so patient at the beginning. Thank you so much. This video will be available for rewatch later, so if you want to go back to it and rewatch it at any point in time, that's absolutely going to sort of be possible, because it's going to be up on YouTube. Yeah, thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye bye.